hide a thing.
Hello all. So this is episode 5 in the series of scams, how to spot them, avoid them, keep yourself safe and keeping others safe. So today going to look at covering door-to-door scams. Now these are one of the most dangerous forms of scams and also one of the most scary forms of scams as well. As is in the name, door-to-door scams are scams that occur by people that go door to door pretending to be other people. Now, as mentioned, they are one of the most scary forms of scams, as quite often the people that carry out these scams will try and gain access to your home. Now, it's normally targeted towards the elderly or the infirm. That's due to the fact that quite often these people will be a bit more trusting, but also possibly be a bit more afraid to push back against somebody. That is due to the person possibly looking intimidating or sounding rather intimidating. So that's perfectly understandable that somebody might be hesitant to actually push back and stop the person from either gaining access or from trying to gain access to their home. Quite often, the people that carry out these types of scams will pretend to be somebody from a utility company or from what is otherwise a trusted business or entity. Now, one of the most common forms is that they will pretend to be a person from a utility company, such as British Gas, Scottish Power, South West Water, you name it. Any form of utility company that provides such a service. This is due to the fact that quite often utility workers, or genuine utility workers from these companies, may occasionally need access to your home to take meter readings. Now these meter readings are there so that the companies can accurately gather information about how much of said utility you have used and to then bill you correctly. If you've overpaid, the meter readings will then be taken and either you'll be reimbursed or your next bill will be lowered, or if you've used more than you've paid for, then they will charge you the relevant amount. One of the first things that these people will do is they will try to befriend you. They'll be very polite, friendly and warm in their demeanour and their tone. They'll explain everything very legitimately. They'll make it sound like they have a legitimate reason to enter your property and to speak to yourself. Now, I'm not saying that utility companies won't carry this out. They do, but they do not always need access to your home. In fact, they don't actually need access to your home if you know where your meters are and can read them accurately. So if somebody does come to your door asking for these readings, then say, that's fine, I can provide them to you, but you will need to stay outside while I get them for you. A legitimate engineer will be absolutely fine with this. If they're not, then just advise them that you do not feel safe or comfortable having them in your home. And if they carry on to kind of be aggressive and to push back towards you, you can always close the door and refuse to interact with them anymore. There is nothing wrong with that at all. Now, quite often they will have an ID badge. This ID badge is very important. If you're not sure as to who they are, or if they are legitimate engineers from the company, you can contact the company to check the ID badge and the employee ID as well against their systems. They will have access to this information, so if they say that they don't, then I would advise to possibly look to contact them again at a later date. especially if the engineer says they won't have that information. Maybe think, well, that doesn't quite sound right, I'm going to phone them anyway. Always try to double check the person's identity against the company that they say they are from. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Just as we have mentioned, if you do get a phone call, an email or something such as that, always try to verify the identity. Once they have access to your home, quite often they will look for things that they can take. So this may be in the form of spare keys, car keys, money, bank cards, things such as that. So it is important to make sure that things such as those are out of sight or locked away safely. Now, I'm not saying you have to keep your whole life in a safe, but at least try to make sure that these items are not in plain view as soon as somebody walks through the door. If this person is a scammer, at least make them work for it. At least make it so that any item or anything that they might want, they would have to actively search for. That will deter them because it will then tip their hand, as it were, and it will give the game away. So that's one of the best bits of advice. If they do gain access, make sure that anything that is of value is out of sight. But as mentioned, if you can, make sure that they are who they say they are, and if you're not sure, don't allow them access to your property. Quite often, some of the more pushy ones will try to position themselves in such a way that closing the door is difficult. If they do try and do that, do not be afraid to use force to get them to move out of the way. Either shut the door with force to force them out of the way, or request they do move back if they are in such a position. If they do refuse to move back, then by all means do use force to get them out of the way. As soon as the door is closed, lock it and contact the police if needs be. Sometimes they will linger around the property, or they will try to gain access. Most of the time they will just take that as a very stern way of saying, get off my property. But if they do continue to try and gain access, then by all means do contact the police as soon as you possibly can. Another thing you can also do as well, which can deter them, is to record them. Now, not everyone has CCTV fitted to their home, that is absolutely fine. But if somebody does come to the door, try to make sure that you pick up a smartphone with a camera or a camcorder or something along those lines, so that you can take a photo or a video of the person that is trying to gain access to your property. When you do have that evidence, or when you do state to them that you are filming, for those that aren't legitimate, they will very much be off-put by this, because it does mean that if you were to go to the police in the future for any reason about them, you have something that clearly shows their face, so that can be used to either advertise their appearance to help and protect others, or it could potentially be used in a criminal case. So that's kind of the main thing that people do come to the door saying they are. I'm not saying that everyone that does knock on the door is some form of scam artist, but I would always advise that if possible, see if they are who they say they are by contacting the company. If they are from an entity which you can't easily or readily contact, maybe ask that they come back again another day. If they are hesitant to do this, then just request they leave. As mentioned, if they try to gain access to the property, request they leave. If they don't, then use force to make sure they do not enter the property. You do have the right and the ability to defend your property within reason. Now, this isn't saying that anyone who tries to enter your property, you can go to town on and you can kind of hurt in a severe way. Any force that is used does have to be proportionate to theirs as well. If they're using a bit of force to try and keep the door open, use more force to shut the door. If they're being aggressive, then try not to meet them at their level. Try to remain calm, but try to always make sure that you are safe as well. Now, I won't go into the legalities and things such as that, as it is not my specialty at all, but do just want to kind of remind people that you do have the right to protect yourself and your property from unauthorized entry from somebody. So there are others that people do try to kind of pretend to be, not just utility workers. Others might be some form of religious group or general canvassers. Now, if you do get people like this, then by all means do speak to them civilly. Don't just dismiss them. They very well may be legitimate, but if you are not sure, then do ask them to leave. It's your property, your home. You do have the right to ask them to leave. If they do refuse to leave or do get aggressive, then you can escalate to contacting the relevant authorities. Do not be afraid to do that, because if you're afraid, that is enough reason to get somebody involved. Also, don't be afraid to shout and scream. If you have nearby neighbours, such as you live in an attached house or maybe in some flats, then if somebody is getting aggressive, be loud, call attention to yourself, try and get others to where you are. This can help because it then bolsters your numbers against the person that is trying to gain access or be aggressive towards you. Quite often that will put them off enough to the point where they will leave. If it does get their back up even more and they become aggressive, you then have some form of backup that can be employed so that you can contact the relevant authorities. So that's just a brief covering of door-to-door scams. So just to summarise, if somebody does come to your door and they do request access to your property, one of the first things to do is to check who they are and what business they are saying they are from. If they provide some form of ID, look to contact the company that they say they are from. Check the ID with them, check that the employee is legitimate. If they're not, then by all means end the conversation there and then. If they are, you still don't have to allow them entry to your property. As mentioned, if they are a utility worker, then you can take the readings for any meters within your home and provide them to the engineer for them to then update the systems. That is absolutely fine. If they refuse, then I would advise to once again end the interaction and to look to contact the company that they have said they are from, and they can then possibly arrange an engineer at a date and a time that you agree to. You can then make sure that somebody is in your home with you just to make sure. If they do get aggressive and try to enter the property, by all means do ask them to leave. They may then try to position themselves to enter your home. If they do this, ask them to leave. If they do refuse to, then by all means do use appropriate force to make sure they cannot enter your home. If they do enter your home, make noise, shout, scream, try to draw attention to yourself. Also, endeavour to contact the relevant authorities such as the police so they can attend. If there is an immediate threat to your life and your safety, that will become a priority call, but do try to make sure that they do not have access. If they do leave your property, by all means do go around and check that all of your windows and doors are locked securely, and to then potentially look to contact the non-emergency line for the police. That way it can be reported and the police can then look to have some form of officer possibly come around the area, have a look, see if anyone else has experienced similar to you, or see if they can spot the person that has tried to gain access. Also, don't forget that you can record the situation. Pick up a phone, a camcorder, a normal camera, and take photos, take video, take audio recordings of the situation. Take the recordings of the person as well. If they are not a legitimate engineer, that will likely be enough to kind of scare them or worry them. If they are legitimate, they shouldn't have a problem with it, as the footage will not be used in any sort of unscrupulous way. Fingers crossed. Don't know who you are or how you want to use it, but please don't. So they are the main kind of ways that you can try and save yourself from door-to-door scams, and also make sure to make others aware of this information as well. Remember, sharing is caring, and if you can help to protect somebody else, whether it be a loved one, family, friend, anyone, just anyone at all, if you can help to protect them, then brilliant. So thank you ever so much for listening today. Do hope you've enjoyed it. Any queries, comments, questions, by all means do leave them, and do hope you enjoy the rest of your day and you do keep safe. Bye. Thank you ever so much for listening today. If you do want to listen to or view this on a different platform, please keep in mind it is on Anchor and on YouTube. On Anchor, it is I Made a Thing, same as on YouTube, also I Made a Thing, and you can also find me on Facebook as well, also under I Made a Thing. So thank you again for listening. Please do like, share, subscribe, and all of that lovely stuff.